2006 Acura TL. EGR insufficient flow. The EGR ports are plugged up. I'm Brian Esser from How To Automotive, and I'm going to show you how to clean those passages out. We'll start by removing the top cover by turning the clips here 90 degrees like that and popping the top engine cover off. So to clean the EGR valve and port out, we actually need to take the upper plenum off. So what we're going to do is start by taking the air cleaner boot off. Take the air cleaner boot off, and then we're going to take the 4 nuts and 4 bolts, or 2 nuts and 2 bolts to hold the throttle body on. And we're going to leave everything connected to the throttle body, just unbolt it and slide it off, and then kind of put it over here. Okay, the easiest way to get the air boot and everything out is to just go ahead and unbolt the screws to hold the top lid down, and then take it all off. Now that you got your throttle body off, and like I said, leave everything connected. You don't need to disconnect anything. Go ahead and disconnect the electrical connector here at your air temp sensor. You can go ahead and remove the vacuum hose here, and this goes to the EGR purge valve. So you go ahead and remove this here, and remove the 10mm bolt here, and just leave the electrical connector and the rest of it hooked up, and just kind of lay it in here. Then you can take your brake booster hose off, take the 10mm bolt off for the vacuum switch here, unplug the vacuum line here, and then let that kind of hang in there. There turned out to be 2 bolts holding the 10mm bolts holding the purge valve on. So after you got the purge valve disconnected, the vacuum hose is disconnected, and the vacuum switch unbolted. Over here on the passenger side, disconnect the electrical connector here, and take the vent line off that goes to the top of the valve cover. Go ahead and take it off right there. After you get that done, go ahead and remove all the 10mm bolts on this top cover here, and take the cover off and set it aside. You got the top cover off, go ahead and remove all the 12mm bolts. So there's 9 of them in total. You don't need to remove the 2 10s, leave those there. So start with these 2 here, and then these 2, 2, 2, and then 1. Now you're ready to lift the upper plenum off. You may have to push the power steering hose kind of with your thumb out of the way as you lift it straight up. So lift it straight up and take it off. Now that we got the upper plenum off, this is the port right here on the front of it, right here. So the carbon builds up in here, and it kind of splits off like that. So now with it off, you can clean this port out with hard spray and compressed air. And then what happens is right here, this port goes down, and it makes like a 90-degree turn down in here for the EGR valve, and the carbon builds up down there. So now you have access to get from the top with some tools to get to the carbon and break it up. So before we do that, we need to take the EGR valve off itself. So we're going to remove the 2 12mm bolts here, and you can disconnect it and kind of set it aside. Okay, to actually clean the actual ports out, we're going to use B12 Chem Tool carb spray, or just any type of good carb spray that you get from your local parts dealer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spray it in the port here. Spray it, like fill it up, just flood it like that, and then I'll do the same thing with the port here. And then one of my favorite tools to use is like an old speedo cable like this. And what I do is I hook it to my little electric drill here, and I'll feed the cable in here, kind of like a snake you would use for plumbing. And I would use the drill, and I'll operate the drill and kind of twist it down there and rotate it until it'll work its way through the port and unplug the port. So go ahead and do that, and then I also use compressed air, and I'll blow the port out. You want to put some rags over it, because when you blow from here, it's going to blow it out this way and may blow all that junk on you. So you want to be careful not to get it in your eyes or whatever. So use like rags and cover it up and wear eye protection, and then so clean the port out, and you can use whatever you got, wire, coat hanger, whatever, and kind of fish it down there. This works really well with the old speedo cables if you can find them. And then after you do that, on mine, this port doesn't look too bad, but I'm going to run a little carb spray in here too and work it around a little bit, and then drain it out on the opposite side. And that's pretty much all we're going to do to the upper end plenum. Most of the time the port plugs in here about 3/4 of the way down. There's like a little 90-degree turn where it turns in there, so that's usually where it plugs at. So once you get there where it's flowing, and you can get air blowing all the way through here and coming out this end, you know you got the port free and it's flowing. then after that, you can go ahead and change out your EGR gasket and your upper plenum gasket here. And you're also going to need a new throttle body gasket. As you can see here, I was able to run the cable in through the EGR side and actually use my snake and run it until it actually came out the top port. So I'll run that thing there through a few times, put a little bit more card spray in there, a little compressed air, and I'll call it done. Now that our ports are cleaned out, I also recommend go ahead and clean out the throttle body since you already have it off and you get really good access to the back of it. So go ahead and change out your EGR valve gasket, your upper plenum gasket. You're going to need to get the upper gasket for the top of the plenum where the plate went, and then a throttle body gasket. So after you're changing your gaskets out, you can go ahead and put your EGR valve on, start the two bolts or nuts, and torque them down to 16 foot-pounds. After tightening the EGR valve down, now you can take your upper plenum and set it back over the studs, and you probably have to push your power steering hose here out of the way, slide it down, and you go ahead and start all the bolts. And once you get them all started, now that you got the upper plenum back on, so what I do is I run the bolts down with my little electric gun, or you can use an air ratchet or whatever you got. I just run them down until they touch like that, and I start with the middle bolts first. So I'll do this one, that one, this one, that one, kind of like this, and then like a crisscross pattern. And once I got them all run down and snug, what I'll do in the same crisscross pattern, I'll start here, I'll torque this down to 16 foot-pounds, then I'll torque the next one, then I'll switch over here like this, that, last one, like that. All torqued down at 16 foot-pounds. Now that you got the upper plenum torqued down, go ahead and put your new gasket on, install your new plate, or not your new plate, but your plate back on, and you're going to do the same thing. You're going to run the bolts in until they touch, and then you're going to start in the middle and torque them down to 9 foot-pounds. So you'll start here, like this, and just do a crisscross pattern and torque them all down to 9 foot-pounds. Now that the upper plate is on and torqued, you can go ahead and change out your throttle body gasket and put your throttle body back on and bolt it up to 16 foot-pounds. Now that the throttle body is bolted back up and torqued down, go ahead and start your two 10mm bolts to hold the purge valve on, the 10mm bolt that held the vacuum switch on, and then after that you can go ahead and start plugging in your vacuum lines for your purge valve. You plug in the vacuum lines for your brake booster, the vacuum valve switch, little vacuum line here. Then you can go ahead and plug in the electrical connector here, and hook up the vent tube here, and the electrical connector for the temp sensor here. Now that all the electrical connectors and vacuum lines are all reconnected, go ahead and install your air cleaner boot and air cleaner assembly, and then you'll put the top cover back on. Now that you got your engine cover back on, now it's time to clear the codes, and that completes the EGR port cleaning on an Acura TL with the 3.2 liter. I'm Brian Esser from How To Automotive. I'd like to thank you guys for watching my videos and encourage you to subscribe. Thank you again.